Good morning. A few decades ago, a Nobel laureate described India as a wounded civilization. He was an Indian born in Trinidad. I, on the other hand, am an Indian born in Pakistan, and I describe India not as a wounded civilization, but as an amputated civilization. Amputated because, forgotten by most of you who were born, including me, after the horrors of partition, somehow Indians have forgotten that the civilization belongs to two rivers, of which both have been lost to them. The word India comes from the Indus, which in all its glory evades India, no matter where you look at it. The other river that you have is the Ganga, of which the delta has been lost to you. And truncated rivers don't make civilizations. India, if it has to go back and claim its heritage of sunken cities in Dwarka, will have to admit that as it stands today, it is a mere shadow of itself, with its both limbs cut off and a body that cannot grow them back. Today, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, you are without your limbs, and yet you walk around as if they never existed. Forgotten is the Sindhu, forgotten is Chittagong, forgotten is Dhaka, forgotten is Lahore. The city of Ram's son is no longer home to any of you, because you have bought into the notion that civilization doesn't matter. All matters is borders. And borders don't really make civilization. Civilizations occurred when borders didn't exist. In 1947, 1 million people were killed in the name of hatred by just one man. But today, we blame the man who opposed that man. Muhammad Ali Jinnah is not criticized, Mahatma Gandhi is. Even the creator of TED owes his birth to that India that we have lost. He goes to Pakistan sometimes, which is not a name of a country, it's an acronym. And which, by the way, changed its name to Bangladesh in 1971. And what was left of Pakistan is called now the truncated state of Pakistan. And to the utter amazement of people like me, few Indians think of Pakistan as India. Yet they are perfectly comfortable recognizing Mr. Naipaul, who comes from Trinidad, as Indian. But I am treated as a Pakistani. I come from Lahore. I come from the city that was awe-inspiring in its majesty, not because it had a majority of Sikhs, Hindus, or Muslims, but because it had a majority of Punjabis who couldn't figure out who was in the majority. Because they were all Lahoris, and they used to say that if you haven't seen Lahore, you haven't seen the world. Today, you don't want to see Lahore because it has changed into a city run by Saudi Arabia. And if the 1 million people that got sacrificed to satisfy the ego of Iqbal, who couldn't win the Nobel Peace Prize thanks to Tagore, and thus changed his Tarana to Milli Tarana, you lost another 3 million people. In the delta of the Ganga, they were short, they were dark-skinned, they didn't speak Hindi or Urdu, so they were inferior. So what happened? 100,000 Punjabi Muslim Pakistani troops went there and committed genocide. What happened next? The Indian army went and liberated them and took their fellow Punjabi-speaking Pakistani prisoners of war, showed them Pakiza, gave them sidearms, and gifted them back to Pakistan. 5,000 war criminals were freed by the Republic of India because no Indian general could speak Bangla and no Mukti Bahini fighter could speak Punjabi or Hindi or Urdu. Thus we created a monster again and again and again. We gifted Pakistan as a civilization with 5,000 war criminals who had raped, murdered, and slaughtered people for just one reason. They were dark-skinned, they were short, and they were considered of an inferior caste. Let no one ever forget that. If you want to talk of an Indian civilization, today the way Bangladeshis are referred to in India is a disgrace for Indian civilization. A Bangladeshi is more of an Indian than the Frenchman who lives in Chennai and writes about the Vedas. Yet we dare not ever make a mockery of a white man, and we take deep pleasure in condemning the dark-skinned person. And this will not happen until and unless the torn off limbs of India are not necessarily rejoined, but recognize that those are my limbs that the British cut off and left us without our arms and convinced us that we can still live. All we have to do is invade Goa, and we will be great. My brothers and sisters, forgotten in this entire tragedy of the last 70 years is a war that is being fought right now. A war in Balochistan, a state invaded by the Islamic Republic of Pakistan in 1948, a country that became independent 3 days before India became independent. A country, a place that had Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Zoroastrians living for hundreds of years with never one communal incident in the last 300 to 400 years. That is the place that India forgot. That is the place that the state of Kalat wanted to join the Union of India. But the Indian Prime Minister said, "Wo bahut dur hai. Jao." On the other side, Badshah Khan had to tell Mr. Gandhi, "You have left us to the wolves." And Mr. Gandhi shrugged his shoulders. Mr. Nehru was content. They had a republic. They had gotten rid of the Muslas. And who wanted to live with another 200 million people who could cause disunity? So Indian civilization today cannot be captured, cannot even be conceived. This India incredible with a dot and an I is useless sloganeering by the advertising agencies that have ruined you. Because India today is the river Indus. And not today, not tomorrow, not in 10 years, or maybe 100 years or 1,000 years. That river will continue to flow. And mark my word, the wound, the amputation done by the British by the creation of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which today is the mother lode of international terror and is the sample of ISIS that threatens the entire world, exists because India thinks that it understands its neighbor. India doesn't even know its neighbor. Indians would not even be able to tell what is the language spoken just west of Rajputana or Rajasthan. Indians don't know that west of Fazilka, the same people live, or Taran Taran is next to Kemkaran, is next to Kasur, the birthplace of Bhule Shah. You have forgotten, you have not just abandoned us to the wolves, you have started feeding the wolves by your Aman Ki Asha. You have today abandoned 50,000 Baloch young men who have been killed by the Pakistan army. 18,000 men have disappeared. Baloch men and women also are dropped from military helicopters in the sands and mountains of Balochistan. And I was shocked to find out at the center of South Asian Studies at JNU that not a single student knew where was Balochistan or what was the state of Kalat. Where the Nanika Mandir, 900-year-old temple, is today guarded by 1,000 Muslim Baloch who have told the Pakistanis that on this land not a single minority blood will be shed. Take your rotten Pakistan and take it back to Uttar Pradesh Nawabs and the Muslims of Punjab. We do not want this. We are Indians. And they wrote on a mountain top in black paint. Perhaps I might not vote for Mr. Modi, but it was written, Ab ki baar Modi Sarkar. And in India, nobody could read it. They thought it was Allahu Akbar. Because everything written in Urdu or Arabic is Islamic, you see. No Indian knew what was happening. How many know that there are Baloch families living in Gujarat, in Maharashtra? How many know that the African community of Surat is Baloch? No one. So my dear friends, brothers and sisters, I am saying that the independent state of Kalat that existed on March 27, 1948, that was invaded by the Pakistan army after it had been repulsed from the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which you remember all the time, but you forget the state of Kalat. I urge you to rise up, talk to your friends and families and every Indian who meets and says, not tomorrow, maybe tomorrow, but not even if in 100 years, but we will never, ever, ever forget that an Indian is an Indian irrespective of whether he's in Trinidad or in Pakistan. Because an Indian is defined